listening to The Mark Cox Show. Find everything Mark Cox at 971talk.com/Cox.
Look, the United States has great relationships throughout Europe. It's going to have those relationships with or without this agreement. Those relationships are based in part on the military security that we provide to the world, the leadership that we provide to the rule with regard to the rule of law throughout Europe and elsewhere in the world. And that's not going to change by virtue of whether or not we're in this agreement.
Senator Mike Lee making a great point there that for all of the belly aching about the climate agreement by Angela Merkel and some of these other folks, it's the equivalent of a cap and trade deal as far as I'm concerned, because I read some language in there where if one country had a certain amount of savings and another country wouldn't hit its limit, it could borrow carbon credits effectively to try to hit its limit, and big countries need to help little countries. And I mean, it is a transfer of wealth, a monstrosity is what this deal is. And if anything, it weakens the United States of America, which a lot of these countries are happy about. Just my opinion. Today, there's a story out that says effectively that the Associated Press is reporting that the president is looking at this deal and he's looking for caveats in the language related to the exit and had not made a final decision. But they are finalizing the details of what a pullout would look like. How about that? Well, lucky to be joined right now by Nick Loris. Nick is an economist who focuses on energy and other issues at the Heritage Foundation. And Nick, welcome back to the program.
No, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, in a nutshell, what do you think about this decision by the president that's apparently pending on pulling out of this agreement, and how hard is it going to be?
Well, hopefully he keeps his campaign promise and withdraws from Paris. He has a few options. He could withdraw. It'll take a three-year window to officially get out, or he could do it in a single year by withdrawing from the entire United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change altogether. It sounds as if they may be looking to try to renegotiate the deal. I'm not so positive on that idea because of how costly and ineffective this whole approach is in terms of trying to address global warming. And it doesn't even matter where you fall on the science behind climate change. This program and the divide between the developed nations and the developing nations will only increase the cost of affordable, dependable energy sources for the developed world. And the developing world isn't going to make the necessary cuts to actually impact global temperatures, even if you are concerned about climate change.
So beyond the impact that the agreement would have had on the United States economy, on energy companies and the like, what would the cost have been out the door for the United States? Did anybody ever really get a firm handle on how many hundreds of millions or billions of dollars we would have had to ship overseas through this agreement to help third world countries try to meet some of these goals?
Yeah, well, the Green Climate Fund, which is that massive wealth transfer that President Obama already shipped over $1 billion of taxpayer dollars without the authority of Congress, was only just the starting point from those who are proponents of the climate change. I mean, they were talking about a $100 billion fund using public money to leverage some private money, but that's the type of money that we could be spending if we continue our participation in this agreement. But the lost economic growth that would come from regulating greenhouse gas emissions is enormous, because 80% of our needs and 80% of the world's energy needs comes from carbon-emitting conventional sources like coal, oil, and natural gas. And when you drive up those costs, you're not just paying when you go to the gas station or when your utility bill comes in the mail. You're paying for more at the grocery store and the Home Depot and everything you buy. And that has tremendous negative ripple effects throughout the economy to the tune of $2.5 trillion in lost gross domestic product that we calculated here at the Heritage Foundation.
Separate issue, but the analogy I made is that with Obamacare, we threw out the baby with the bathwater. We went much further than we needed to go to fix the problem. In this particular case, as you look around the world, it strikes me we have a pretty good idea who the offenders are. The U.S. has already been on a path to reduce its carbon emissions for 15 or 20 years. We've done a pretty good job on that already. There are some countries, these third world countries, under this agreement, who aren't even really expected to try. And that's where the bulk of the pollution's coming from right now, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at China, for instance, they don't have to peak their emissions until the year 2030, and they've already lied about their CO2 emissions and underreported the amount of coal-fired power plants that they're burning. India is in a similar scenario where their commitment is based on energy intensity. So they just have to continue to grow their economy, and then they continue to emit more CO2 emissions. And that's largely because energy poverty is a much more imminent, pressing threat than climate change. And so they have a reason to want to grow their economies and get access to affordable, reliable energy sources. And frankly, what I'd like to see is China address the real environmental challenges that they're facing today. Their black carbon and black soot that's resulting in adverse health impacts to their environment. That has nothing to do with CO2 or greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I haven't. I downloaded this thing and I went through all of the whereas and what fors off the first 8 or 10 pages, and then I came to this article, and this summed it up for me. That anytime you're dealing with an international group like this that's connected to the UN, who has to put flowery, ridiculous PC language like this into an agreement, there's no reason to be part of it because it's impossible I would think it would be impossible to enforce this because they give people so many outs. So basically what the article, what the paragraph says is you have to acknowledge that climate change is a common concern of humankind. And parties, when taking action to address climate change, must respect, promote, and consider their respective obligations on human rights, health, indigenous peoples, local communities, migrants, children, persons with disabilities, people in vulnerable situations, the right to development, as well as gender equality, empowerment of women, and intergenerational equity. What the hell does that have to do with global climate change?
Yeah, it doesn't. It has to do with more of a socioeconomic transformation. And I don't want to sound hyperbolic or fear-mongering, but that's effectively what they want. And when this was being negotiated, the United Nations Executive Secretary for the UNFCCC was pretty honest about that. I mean, she said, and I'm quoting here, that this is the first time in history of mankind that we are setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, trying to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. So this is really about trying to de-develop and getting away from fossil fuels, which have lifted billions out of poverty and made our lives dramatically more healthy and just quite frankly cleaner.
Yeah, dramatically better. I mean, I'm sure that if somebody had walked around our streets during the Industrial Revolution, you would have seen plenty of smog and all of that. I'm not doubting that it happened, but you also can't dispute the positive effects that it's had on the world as well. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and we address those problems, and that's the whole point of economic growth. Gives you the resources to address those byproducts that come from factories and power plants and tailpipe emissions, and we're better off for it.
Yeah, amen. Nick Loris, thank you so much for your insight on this, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that the president keeps his pledge that he made on the campaign trail.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you so much. Nick Loris is with the Heritage Foundation. You can go to heritage.org and read more of his thoughts on this. It is... Folks, this thing is a Trojan horse designed to be filled with U.S. tax dollars. He already told you that President Obama sent $1 billion of public money to this thing already without the approval of Congress. How does that happen? $1 billion wasted, not coming back to the U.S. to help somebody in a third world country who's not going to cut their emissions to begin with. It's a transfer of wealth, plain and simple. If any news breaks on that one, we'll let you know here in the next little bit, I promise. All right, when we come back, Annie Fry's going to join us here in the studio. We're going to talk about a number of things. We'll bring this Kathy Griffin thing back up again just because she just got fired. You're fired. Trump didn't do it. CNN did it. Believe it or not, they fired Kathy Griffin. We'll get to your phone calls. We'll talk about our Twitter poll on whether or not people are starting to see through the media with stories like Jared Kushner and some of the others that are floating around. It's all coming up today on The Mark Cox Show.
This hour of The Mark Cox Show brought to you by Thomas Helbig, the official St. Louis financial advisor of The Mark Cox Show.
What is your health care bill looking like these days? What does your premium look like? How about that deductible? Do you have $500 or $600 or $700 a month in premiums, or maybe more, and then a $5,000 or $6,000 deductible, so you have to spend that amount before you can even start using the health care that you're paying for? That's the situation a lot of people found themselves in with these steep increases on the exchanges in recent years. So if that's where you are, if you're self-employed, you have to get your insurance through one of these exchanges, call my friend Bill Pauly, 314-304-6850. It's a free phone call. You call them up and tell them your situation. They work with a lot of major health insurance companies, and they were able to. One friend of mine had his premiums dropped $500 or $600 a month, reduced, and then got a lower deductible on top of it. 314-304-6850. The Healthcare Solutions Team, 314-304-6850.
This is Kim Tucci, co-founder of the Pasta House Company, and Father's Day is just around the corner. And the Pasta House Company wants to celebrate with you. In honor of Father's Day, all dads eat free. That's right. This Father's Day, dads get an order of spaghetti with meat sauce and a piece of our famous cheesecake free. Bring dads in this Father's Day to the Pasta House Company for this terrific treat. Another reason why everybody loves the Pasta House Company.
Right now at Donaldson Cycles, every motorcycle for the street is just $139 a month. That's right, all street bikes just $139 a month. Yamaha, Honda, Ducati, and Triumph, all just $139 a month. Standard, sports bikes, cruisers, adventure bikes. Every new street bike is just $139 a month. Hurry, just a few more days. Donaldson Cycles on St. Charles Rock Road in St. Anne, or Yamaha only at South Lindbergh and Tesson Ferry. DonaldsonCycles.com. Payments with approved credit and proportional down payment. Details in store.
For me, it was the big S-Class from the 90s. Beautiful. My friend's dad had one.
The SL. All of the SLs. I've been watching those since I was a kid.
I think the 1971 SE was the first Mercedes that just blew me away.
Everyone remembers the first time they saw one, and the day they began to long for a Mercedes-Benz of their own.